Herd Nerds. I'm Desi, and I have an extraordinary guest today. He started out as a pitcher for the New York Yankees and has knocked it out of the ballpark as a Wagyu businessman. I am so pleased to welcome Pete Eshelman. Hi, Pete.
Desi, how are you? Thanks for letting me be on your show.
Well, I just felt like you had so much you could share to help breeders and to share what you've been through in your business and how you got there. It's just such an interesting story about perseverance and hard work. I am just happy for you to let our viewers know what it took to get you where you are today. And you are successful in everything, and I admire you for that.
Well, thank you, Desi. I think I can. I think to be successful, you make a lot of mistakes. So I'll be talking about a lot of mistakes that'll save people that get in the Wagyu business a lot of time and a lot of money. So hopefully, it'll help. This will help people be more successful.
I can identify with those mistakes myself. I want everybody to know that the quality of your beef is exceptional, and you are a two-time grand champion winner of the Triple Crown, which means your steaks were put through the ringer and you came out on top. What made you want to enter the competition, Pete?
Well, I think to totally honest, it was you, Desi. You had a vision of taking a state competition to the next level, which was to take all the subjective evaluation out of it and apply science and apply the latest scientific techniques in terms of tenderness, marbling score, intermuscular marbling, taste, on and on. And I think you were the first one, not only in the United States, but the world, that said, let's throw some science at this. And I'd have five people around the room talking to each other saying who has the best steak. It was your vision, I think your personality, that your passion for this. And I thought, you know what? If I enter and I don't win, the data that you get back from the test that you do is going to help my breeding program. So I'm going to win if I lose.
That's true. And I always tell people, and I'm so thankful to the breeders that have really sent steaks in and been a part of the Triple Crown. It's been 6 years, Pete, and I let them know that the fatty acid profiles tell them about their feed program. The way their ribeyes look tells them about their heritable traits from their sires and dams. And we just get so much information that it's not just about taste. It's about what your programs do and who your sires are. What kind of carcass merit are they putting into your program through the genetics you've selected? So that's one of my main goals of the Triple Crown, is to help people really see. And I'm excited. There's so much new technology now, and you're a two-time winner. I think I have a little picture of your steaks I'd like to show people, the quality of beef that you have, and we'll get that up in a minute. And let's see, it's coming up. There's one of the winners. Look at the marbling in that. And I want people to notice there's no large, what we call coarse marbling cutting through that. It's a very beautiful ribeye. And then we have a picture of your full-on ribeye cut. And it is amazing. And you want to tell us a little bit about who taught you about Wagyu?
Well, yeah, there's Idomichi and Hikokura right there. That's 33 months age at harvest. Um, so my story about Wagyu is unique. What you just talked about, Des, breeding, is probably more than I know. I'm a guy who started out with the New York Yankees organization. I founded sports insurance businesses. Um, so I lived in a coat and tie for about 30 years. And so how on earth, I didn't know anything about farming, but I tasted Wagyu. One night at our restaurant, we own a restaurant where we would entertain our clients. These sports entertainment people are very confidential. You couldn't take them to the country club because everybody wanted their autographs and pictures. So we set up our own private dining room, which evolved into a restaurant. And we tasted Wagyu one night at the restaurant. They called it Kobe, which it wasn't. But it was one of those life transforming experiences that many of us have in the Wagyu business. We taste it and we go, wow, this is awesome. What is it? Where did it come from? How is it raised? That began the journey. So my I guess approach to this was, again, a guy in a coat and tie. I met a man by the name of Shogo Takeda from Hokkaido, Japan, and there's Mr. Takeda, and he's a pioneer in the exportation of Wagyu genetics around the world. Uh, Actually, during the Clinton administration, there was a legal protocol that allowed for the legal exportation of Wagyu genetics. America took advantage of that. He shipped the genetics to America. Australia, on the backs of that, got involved. And today, over 30 countries are producing Wagyu outside of Japan. But long story short, Desi, I tasted that. He invited me to Hokkaido, Japan, and I went to his yakiniku restaurant and experienced his Wagyu. And it's an experience. Wagyu is an experience. Sitting around his yakiniku table with Ted Naruke, the interpreter. And I always thank Ted because I don't speak a lick of Japanese. And if it wasn't for Ted, we'd still be at the airport trying to get to the hotel. But anyway, Mr. Takeda, he wanted to see if I was serious. Was I just another American that wants to get into this stuff and not, be a long-term player? And I convinced him that I was in it for the long term with a restaurant like he had, and I live on a farm. And so I bought his genetics in his living room. Mr. Takeda was a chain smoker, recently passed away in his mid-90s, and he was smoking those cigarettes, and the windows were shut. He could see my brother about ready to pass out. Those, but he got us. So we bought some bulls and some females that he had here in the U.S. But the more importantly, I said, Mr. Takeda, I don't know anything about raising cattle. He said, I will teach you. And if you will be a good student and listen to what I have to say and do what I have to say, I guarantee you will raise world-class Wagyu. And his whole thing was, so basically I listened to him. Here's a guy in a coat and tie, business guy. I had a fourth generation Indiana farmer as my farm manager. He knew, husbandry. And so Mr. Takeda came over 3 or 4 times. And so my secret really is to if you call it success in the Wagyu business, and certainly winning a Triple Crown is awesome, 2 years in a row, is really learning from the man who was the master in Japan for over 70 years. And totally indebted to Mr. Takeda. He passed away this past spring. The world really lost a great man, great revolutionary thinker, and a great man in the Wagyu industry.
And I remember when we had Mr. Takeda come to the conference, the AWA conference, and that was wonderful because a lot of people got to meet him, and I really enjoyed meeting him and getting my picture. I can say I have my picture with Mr. Takeda. And when you're in the business, you can't help but really admire people who make it to the top, because that is all of us. All of us are trying to have that beautiful carcass. And the truth is, we don't always get that, Pete. I just did some statistics on, I think it was 33,000, Wagyu carcasses. And it's It's really just like Japan. Everybody might have a misconception. Japan does not produce all A5 carcasses. It's all about the husbandry and the genetics. And it's something that we just need to share more with. And that's why I love this podcast and I love you talking to people, because we really need to share. We need to share worldwide, if you ask me, in everything that we do, and share our carcass accolades. And also you have to share the good with the bad. I mean, I've cried over a carcass before. I thought I couldn't wait to see it. And I was there. I had my camera. I was like, oh yeah, oh yeah. And I get in there and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
So,
Well, Desi, you said a couple really important. One is consistency. So if you're in the world-class Wagyu business, you have to produce consistent carcasses. And being in the restaurant business, I get judged every night when people order their Wagyu. And so I can't have, inconsistent quality. So the next question is, how do you get consistency? And I think that is you find that sweet spot in your breeding program, your genetics, and your husbandry practices, and the diet, and then you stick with it. Now, I had the advantage that I adopted a sweet spot that a man had built for 70 years. So I just applied that. Essentially, you could close your eyes and you could, on our farm, you could be in Hokkaido, Japan. Our feeding program is his. Our barns are designed by his. And so Mr. Decuis taught me something. He said, Pete, he said, world-class Wagyu, it's a very simple formula. 60% has to be the genetics, the proper genetics that will create the marbling. But 40% is the husbandry and the diet. And so I liken that in my old business, baseball. You see these kids today, young kids, they're men. They're throwing 100-mile-an-hour fastballs. You can't teach somebody how to throw a fastball. That's talent. That's God-given talent. But you can teach them how to pitch. And so in the Wagyu business, you have the genetics. Then the next thing is to take that calf and treat it drug-free, stress-free, with the proper diet to allow that marbling gene to kick in. Mr. Decuis always said about the 17th month, and let that animal mature. And so that, I think two things there, Desi, I'd say consistency, but also kind of, you found it, and you're now teaching people. And Mr. Decuis he admired you because you are like him. He wanted to teach the world. And I said, Mr. Decuis, what is your goal? Because he was a little ostracized by having genetics and, to America, et cetera. And he said, my goal is for the world to enjoy this beautiful meat called Wagyu. And he said, with Wagyu, we will revolutionize the quality of beef in the world. And if you think about that, here's a man that's probably 6 or 5'3" in Hokkaido, Japan, and he's thinking about the world and feeding the human race with highest quality beef, but also healthy beef.
healthy. Yes, Pete, healthy. Healthy is the word, and I cannot stress it. I've done 6 years of testing Wagyu and fatty acid profile, and I have done 6 years of testing Angus against that and other beef breeds, American beef breeds. And I can tell you without a doubt that I have 6 years of data showing that Wagyu beef, even F1 Wagyu, anything Wagyu touches becomes a healthier beef. And I really hope this year to write some papers and have it published and get this out to let everybody know that it is a very healthy beef, and that your breeder, the breeders that participate in the Triple Crown, they are all people that care about the quality of their carcass. They're not worried about how much the animal weighs. They're not going for getting the animal there the quickest so they can sell it. They are going for a quality carcass. And I want to let the world know, and everybody in the U.S. know how healthy Wagyu beef is compared. I mean, it's not just a small amount. It's a large, difference in regular beef and American Wagyu.
Desi, it's interesting that as I understand it, I think from Dr. Horner, that the Japanese government pays a bonus, a premium for the lipid profile that is healthier. And their drive is to create beef that's healthy. And I think we adopted that model in America with the issues we have with obesity and chronic disease. And we all of a sudden farmers were giving bonuses and incentives to create healthy food. That's a game changer. So I think one thing I'd say too, Desi, is that I totally adopted the Japanese method of raising Wagyu with the honor and respect that I was taught to me by Mr. Takeda. And I'd just like to say this, that if you think about how Wagyu was invented, it's something every beef connoisseur in the world should really understand. Because over 200 plus years ago, during the Meiji Restoration in Japan, the Japanese government decided they want to be westernized. And so, as I understand the history, the Japanese government allowed the citizens to eat meat. Only the soldiers were allowed to eat meat at the time. So the Japanese took, in the absence of genetics and genomics and science, they took native cattle that were hauling rocks out of mines, logs out of forests, they were workers in the rice fields. They bred these animals, and they had goals. The goals were good calvers, good milkers, mild-mannered, and marbling, fat in the muscle. But they understood that created the tenderness and the great flavor and the taste in a stress-free environment. So if you think about that, and look where we are today, which it's the finest, healthiest beef in the world. By the way, the most expensive. It's just extraordinary how the Japanese. It's a Japanese culinary, or it's a national treasure, Wagyu.
Yes,
And
it is.
I think so. Anyone that raises Wagyu, we have to really honor and respect and thank the Japanese for their creation.
I agree, Pete. And, my cattle and your cattle are very docile. And in Japan, when you go to look at the cattle in the barns where they raise them, you can touch every one of them. Those cattle are very docile. And one of the things I learned was that stress is a big factor in having really great beef, is that the cattle are happy, the cattle are not stressed, they have shelter, that they're well cared for, and I really believe that makes a big difference.
Desi, another secret that I have, which people think is kind of funny, but Mr. Takeda, stress free, stress free, stress free. He said, Pete, I want to see the Wagyu resting 16 hours a day, not sleeping, but resting. And if you think about it, as a human, if we're stress free, we're healthier or happier. That's their whole philosophy with the Wagyu. That's a huge factor. So the environment's got to be a stress-free environment. So during spring training, and by the World Series is over, I play Yankee games to them in my barn, and I get the old games with Joe DiMaggio and Mickey Mantle and all those guys, but they loved that because the roar of the crowd. Remember the old radio, baseball games on the radio? In the background, there's that soft noise. It's the roar of the crowd. They love that. And when a Yankee hits a home run like Joe DiMaggio, they put their heads up and they're happy, and then they put their heads back down.
Yeah.
we have it's true though. It's part of the stress-free type of type of environment.
Yeah, and they are extremely they're very attentive to what goes on around them. They're really wonderful cattle.
We've had we've had some employees that would come in and they're working commercial feedlot kind of situations or whatever, and that's their experience. And they come in and they're acting like rawhide,
Oh,
you know,
I know.
yelling and they're pushing and and these Wagyu are smart, and you don't cross them, and they remember.
Mm-mm.
And I've let people go on the spot. I said, look, you're slow. They can sense your anger, your anxiety, your they and you just don't want them to do that. But if you get people that walk in there, I know, and I got to tell you, the girls that work on the farm are better than the guys because they are much better with animals. They're more patient, and the guys get a little freaked out until they learn. And
Right.
I don't know about your farm, but I found that, and they remember they go through the chute and have a bad experience. They're not going to go back in there. These are
That's right.
very, very smart animals, and they have personalities. And you really got to understand that.
Yep, and I have my favorites, and they know who they are, and they even know what truck I drive when they see my truck. I got one. She'll be up at the gate every time if my truck drives up. And Mr. Jim will call me sometimes. He goes, "Well, I need to move these cattle. You want to come out here?" And all I do is call them and open the gate, and they'll go from one pen to the other. So it is a.
Yeah.
I just, yeah, people do say when they come here to work, they've never worked with cattle like this. And that is one of the wonderful things about having a small herd.
Yeah.
And so, Pete, I would just want to ask you, what do you consider one of the most important issues facing Wagyu breeders today?
Well, I think I don't have to think too long. I think it's truth in labeling is huge. We have in Japan, once again, it's the highest level of authenticity, traceability, transparency. Uh, the label that they put on their meat, you know what the pedigrees are, what farm it was raised, how long it was on feed, where it was harvested. It's a barcode. You can pull all that stuff up. In America and parts of really most of the world outside of Japan, we have multiple types of Wagyu. So Japan, it's Wagyu. It has to be 100%, as you know, Desi. Commercial cattle would be Wagyu influenced or Wagyu crossed with Holstein or Angus.
Mm-hmm.
America, for example, you can have F1 Wagyu, which is crossed with Angus. It's a wonderful product. You can have F2, you can have purebred, and you can have full blood. The issue in America is that there is no requirement by the USDA to disclose to the public, to the consumer, what the percentage of Wagyu is in that piece of meat. Now, the other thing that we don't do in America is called country of origin labeling, because we're not required to put necessarily country of origin. Um, so in a commercial environment, you might have 100 different animals from other countries in one piece of ground beef because they all put all that together. So I think a long story or answer, Desi, is that we need to work hard to disclose to the consumer what they're actually getting when they buy Wagyu. And full blood is going to be more expensive than a cross, 50-50 cross with Angus and Wagyu. That's still a great product. And so we actually, if you could turn this kind of into an advantage, that we have a wide bandwidth of Wagyu from the 50-50 cross to the 100%. It's kind of like the wine industry. Vineyards don't just have their finest wine. That's all they sell. They've got different kinds of wine for different
Yes.
dining experiences at different price points. So I think if we can nail that one down and give confidence in the consumer as to what they're actually getting, That's going to be huge. The second thing I think, Desi, is that the health benefits. We need to have a peer-reviewed research paper that proves that this meat is the healthy meat, perhaps the healthiest in the world. And that is a game changer because consumers, studies are what? They want animals raised humanely. They want meat that's drug free. They want to know where it comes from, how it was raised, and is it good for you? And what's it doing to the environment? How are we treating the environment? So a lot of opportunity, actually.
Right. And I'm going to do everything I can to have that paper written this coming year. I have, when I first started, of course, Kiego Kuchita, he taught me everything. And, he told me you can't start writing things until you have years, at least 5 years. And then you can really start. People will listen at 5 years. They won't listen if it's 30 head. They won't listen if it's 100 head, but you need to, wait at least 5 or 6 years and then start putting the information out. And that's exactly what the Triple Crown has provided for us. And I am going to start putting that information out. And I agree with you about consumers. And, consumers don't know. They go to the store to buy Wagyu. They see a package. I have seen it. We do testing every year, all 6 years. We go in different stores and we buy what is called a Wagyu product and we do testing on it. And we also buy what is called a USDA stamped prime Angus steak. We have bought those too. And we found that even in the Angus group, the steaks are not what they're being advertised as. And so this year, I have someone that goes and buys these products. We do the research on it. We see which stores are really selling what they say. But the problem is when a consumer goes into a store to purchase Wagyu, they think they're getting 100% Wagyu. And they end up getting an F1 product, which, like you said, is a great product, but it's got a different texture and it has a different taste than 100%. If you go by grade, let's just say grade so we can separate it there. The F1s grade, and they are above prime, generally above prime. I mean, anything with Wagyu influence, I've noticed is pretty much above prime. And so you have an above prime product. So you're already getting a really nice piece of meat. But if you're looking for the experience that you see, online and in magazines, the say 39% intermuscular fat IMF and up, you're looking for a full blood product.
Yeah.
And you're not going to get that when you buy something that says Wagyu and it's not highly marbled like the photos of the meat that you produce. That's, one way to tell is to look at the marbling pattern, and that will help you. But people are allowed to call it Wagyu even when it's not a full blood product. So I think that that's a good
And I,
step
and,
that you want to take in helping to actually advertise exactly what it is you're selling.
and it actually creates a lot of intrigue with the product because it's just not the Wagyu is an experience. It's to be enjoyed with people. It's to be enjoyed in a celebratory type environment at a nice restaurant with nice wine. And the more people learn about Wagyu and the pedigrees and the husbandry practices, the other issue you just hit on is a big one too. It's the grading system. And so the American Wagyu Association, I know, is working on this with the USDA, but it's an issue around the world. So in Japan, Desi, their grading system for Wagyu starts at what, 23.3%,
Mm-hmm.
55%. And that's that's calibrated on the camera, and that used to be just visual. And you've been a pioneer with the camera technology, so you probably know more about this than anybody. But just think about this for a second when I talk to people. USDA prime, the lowest marbling is 12.5%, roughly. The Japanese start at 20, almost 24%.
Yes.
So when you have Wagyu raised in America, if you get a USDA label prime and your marbling score or your marbling percent is 45%, that's not doing justice to the quality of that product. The U
No, it's not.
and the USDA is really seriously looking at that right now, and the reason is because there's something that changed the whole grading equation. It's called camera technology. And Desi, you've been a pioneer in this. You know all the technologies out there, the German technology, the Japanese technology, etc. But now there's the ability to, uh, really capture, what's going on with the fat in the muscle. Then on top of that,
Right.
fat is healthy. You know, isn't that a great product? It's unbelievable.
It is. It's a great product, and I do think it should. It should be graded. I brought the cameras to the U.S. to start, especially for Wagyu, to do the grading, and it's this year at the Triple Crown we had both the MIJ camera and the MEQ camera, and we also had USDA gold graders, which was I love that portion of it because we were like kids in a candy shop when I had all the steaks for the Triple Crown laid out. I mean, those guys they were wonderful. And, they know that they looked at those steaks and the steaks were so above the USDA prime. I mean, it was just like rocket time, just whoosh, way out there above, USDA prime. And they know the need and they're working on it, but they're the government and it takes some time. But I do want to give a hand to USDA for what they're doing to help, because Wagyu is also, your F1s are also above prime. And so, you have all this meat coming in now that's falling off the cliff just going by USDA prime because it's way out there. So, I think consumers should get excited and be happy that I believe Wagyu is changing the beef industry as we know it. And it's a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Desi, what you said there too, I think it's that every country has a different palate. I've been fortunate to be the chairman of the World Wagyu Council the last 3 years, and we've got 11 countries in the world that are Wagyu associations. We work together on, ideas, initiatives to promote the integrity and the brand of Wagyu internationally. Our next big project, health benefits. I think we can provide some data internationally for you on your study. But I think that America, we eat differently than the Japanese. And I own a restaurant, and I'll be there tonight having a Wagyu steak with my lovely wife. And this A5, the high level of BMS of 12, Japanese, uh, people in my restaurant in Northeast Indiana, they're really not going to like that. They might try it, and for once in their lifetime, but they want, in this part of the world, they want to just be able to chew into that steak and have it tender, have it juicy, know where it comes from, how it was raised. They love the fact that 5 miles down the road it's raised on our farm. So that F1 product, which is 50% Wagyu, 50% Angus or Holstein, that's a great American steak. I mean, it is, like you said, prime plus, but it's got a lot of that, that it's kind of like, I'm 70 years old, little kid. That's the kind of food that I used to eat, when cattle, by, or beef was just done in a kind of different way. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, it's I think there's a lot of education to be done, and I applaud you, Deb, because you're a real entrepreneur. You took an idea. I think a lot of entrepreneurs start off with kind of something happened to them that they didn't like. And I think you didn't like the way these state competitions were going. And I think you told me one time, there's got to be more to it than four or five people sitting around and, saying what's a good steak or not a good steak.
Chewing it up. Yeah.
And but that everything starts there. But I think you are one of the first that got into the scientific analysis of and applying that to a competition. Americans love competitions. We are competitive people. So when you applied the science, which can be kind of dry and you know detailed, but when you apply that to a competition, man, you're starting to get people excited and wound up and and interested. And now you're taking that data over 6 years, and you've probably got more carcass data than most people. I don't know, maybe perhaps anybody in the United States, and more lipid, the fat analysis stuff. Now you're going to start going, really, and then giving it back into people that are cattle producers and food producers, retailers, restaurateurs, consumers. Um, we're in a really exciting time in America's really food movement, and Wagyu,
Yes.
in my opinion, Wagyu is the rock star.
It is the rock star. And, healthy beef, I'll tell you, Pete, when I first started, I don't tell many people this, but I guess I'm telling everybody now. I wanted to do research on Wagyu, but I couldn't really afford to pay a lot of colleges to do it. So I said, let me do a competition and I'll get all the steaks in and I can do something for the breeders and I can get the data I need to prove how amazing this Wagyu beef is. So it's been 6 years and I've been able to go to top notch universities across the United States known for their meat science programs. I mean, you remember I was at Purdue,
Yeah.
UGA. I mean, I love, all of Texas Tech, and now I have Auburn, and Auburn is, I'm too much for them, I think, because I'm like a kid in a candy shop, all this stuff available to us to do beef quality testing. And so not only am I going to prove, and I can say this, I'm going to prove it. I just need to get the scientific papers written up. Not only is it the healthiest beef, but it is the most tender. And
Yeah.
I'm going to, and I'm talking about even down into your percentage Wagyu. They're exceptionally tender as well. So just overall, it is a top notch, top quality, luxurious, delicious, buttery tasting, magnificent sensory experience when people go to eat it. I mean, there's not much beef when you go to eat it that actually makes you close your eyes and go, oh my God. And I have taken so many pictures of people when they first eat Wagyu, and I'm about to publish that on a podcast too. And it's amazing at how people just enjoy that first delicious taste. And I'm going to tell you, Wagyu, EF percentage and full blood, they have such a delicious beefy flavor. The flavor profile is off the charts. I mean, if you eat it, you you just get to where other things you just don't want any other beef.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing, Desi, that I like about the Wagyu industry is that it brings people together. And if you produce Wagyu, it's almost like a family kind of environment. Of the 1,600, maybe 1,700 members of the American Wagyu Association, and out of the 2,500 producers of Wagyu outside of Japan and the World Wagyu Council, um, uh, these people, for the most part, are smaller operations, family operations. They treat their cattle like their family. Um, and it just kind of brings people together. And Can I tell a little story we had for dinner?
Sure.
So we had the Japanese delegation at our restaurant about a month ago. The general consul general, his group, and in Indiana they have the Japanese American Society, and it's a national thing. But where the state has relationships with the Japanese for trade, bringing business here, we bring business there, etc. So we have a private dinner at the restaurant for 25 people. And think about this. These are Japanese high level government officials going to try Wagyu raised on an Indiana farm. So it was spectacular. But I said, Alice, what are we going to talk to these people about? So here's how my presentation started. I said, Alice and I love Japan. We love the people. We love the culture. We love being there. But I want to compliment you for two things that you have offered humanity. I said, the first thing is in baseball, Shonani, this Japanese player that is about ready to sign a $500 to $600 million contract. He pitches and he bats, and he's the MVP. And I said, you got his inspiration. I said, that hasn't happened since Babe Ruth. Babe Ruth used to pitch, he used to hit. I said, you have inspired millions of kids, or he has inspired. This Japanese baseball player coming to America has inspired millions of kids around the world to go on both sides, hit and throw. My 8-year-old grandson is one. So thank you for that. And I said, the other thing you did was you invented this product called Wagyu, the finest beef in the world. And Alice and I have a saying, and this might not be politically correct, but Wagyu brings the world together. And politics doesn't seem to be doing a great job. Religion doesn't seem to be doing a great job.
No.
But we can come together tonight and celebrate Wagyu in Indiana. And we call that culinary diplomacy. Wagyu,
Yes.
people in the world together. And they love that. And I think that I guess where I'm heading with that is that it's a joy. It's a joy to raise, and if you raise it, it's also a joy to see people love it. And I said, but I apologize for my English. I do not speak Japanese except for a few words. And they go, well, what is that? And I said, well, here are my breeding bulls: Iromichi, Kimifuku, Kimitofuku, Bijiro, Igashigifuku, and Morikito Taro Doi. And they said, your Japanese is great. That's
Well, mine must be good too, Pete. That's wonderful. That's a wonderful story.
Thank you.
I just and yeah, you'll notice that most of the people that name their cattle do keep the Japanese names, and I think that's great because now we know which sires and dams we like that produce great quality beef. And me, I'm old school. I believe the only way you can really tell if they're produce great beef or not is to look at the carcass of what they've produced. And there it is. It's not an estimate. It's not a probability. It is the real thing. And so I'm always saying that the data on the carcasses is so important that we, have this data.
And Desi, we're very fortunate in the way that our Wagyu operation, we're vertically integrated, which means we breed them, we raise them, we finish them here on our farm. The only thing we don't do is we don't harvest them, and we don't fabricate. We do that through a USDA facility. Although my primals go to the restaurant and we break down the steaks and the cuts there,
Mm-hmm.
to see every carcass in every ribeye. And I think that, and taste it, because at the end of the day, I think you can have some good statistics, but it's got to be a great culinary experience, the taste. But I think what you're doing with the carcass grading, the folks that don't have a restaurant or don't see the end result, um, once they get those carcass results, through the scientific methods that you support, that is huge in your breeding decisions. And
Yes.
how many days on feed should you adjust your feed program? Because the other thing with Wagyu is that they are sensitive to the environment, and so if you're in Santa Fe with 30,000 acres and you're raising Wagyu, that's a whole different environment and climate than Desi where you are and where I am. So you got to kind of tweak it and dial it in to your environment. And those are kind of the little nuances that are really a lot of fun. But the breeding decisions really are what's on that table, and did it work or didn't it work? And like you said,
Exactly.
you don't win them all. You want to be consistent as much as possible. But if you have an outlier that just didn't work, who was a dam, who was a sire, what was the pedigree, what was the feed, what was the age at harvest, what was the environment, was it born in a bad weather situation? Calves get off on the wrong footing. It's tough. Um, so there's a
Oh,
lot going into this. Mother
well,
Nature, we
yes.
Mother Nature.
And another thing, Pete, you don't know. Sometimes when they're going to be processed, things happen at that processing facility you're not aware of that really cause the hormones in those animals, fear hormones, and fear hormones can affect your carcass like you would not believe. It really can turn a very nice, bright, well marble. It can knock you out 3 grades. I know that because we're doing research on that right now. We're also doing research on shipping
Yeah.
and how the animals are when they arrive. And they're not stupid. They know what's going on. And the treatment of those animals prior to them getting there, all of that bears weight on your carcasses. And Dr. Belk is going to do a podcast telling us about how the processor chills your carcass, when it goes into rigor mortis. We don't even think about those things generally, but that processing of chilling the carcass as it goes into rigor mortis can really affect your tenderness scores.
You
And
know,
so she's going to do a podcast about
no,
that.
see, now you're talking about the nuances. One of my favorite, being a former professional baseball player, I'm really into that. And if to be a great hitter or a pitcher, it's it's all about nuances. It's about detail. It's about aiming for perfection. So I just bought my 8-year-old grandson a book. It's called by Ted Williams. It's called The Science of Hitting, and it's a little bit over his head at 8 years old. Actually, major league professional baseball players would struggle with a little bit because but he
Hmm.
nuances. And so in the Wagyu business, these details and nuances. So a couple of things you just said. David Blackmore, one of the great Wagyu producers in Australia, one of Mr. Takeda's, you know, just he did what I did and just taking it to another level, and just
Right.
applying the Takeda methodology. But he says you raise these animals like your kids, stress-free, drug-free, healthy, and then you ship them off to be harvested in a and ours are like 2 hours, 2.5 hours. They spend the night. They're freaked out being in this truck. They spend the night in some place they've never been to before. And David says exactly what you've said, is that maybe 10 to 15% of the marbling goes away because of that last part of their life was stressful. The other
Yes.
and I think to do some podcasts on that's huge. And so I've got to figure out a way. That's the weakness in my program. The other thing is the processing. Is how long do you age the carcass? When we started, we tried everything from, you know, 5 days, 7 days, 10 days, 30 days, 45 days, 60 days. Aging is an American phenomena to take tough meat and tenderize it and break down the enzymes. Why, you don't have to do that. We hang ours maybe 7 days and boom. But when you process it, I was just in Florida or Texas. If you freeze yours or prepare it in fresh, and you have a bad cryovac machine, you just ruined it. I was just
Yes.
in Fort Worth to a facility. They just paid $1 million for their cryovac machine and the science that goes in to properly cryovacking. And then, like you said, there's just so much to it. And you could do everything to have this great product. And then at the harvest facility, the fabrication facility, everything could get ruined. So I'm glad you're getting into that.
Yes, well, we spend so much money and time and attention to our cattle to have a, high quality carcass, and then you send it to a processor. I'm not saying there's bad processors out there, but I know there are some that just don't pay attention to detail like we do. And I've had processors say, "Oh God, here she comes,"
Sure.
because I want my cattle done first. I don't care what time I have to get there, because number one, they are herd animals and they actually form relationships with other cattle. And when they are taken in a trailer, you hear them crying and you hear the cattle in the pens crying too, in your field. I mean, you're taken away, part of the family. And so there they are in a place they're not used to. And we all know what they're smelling when they're there. It's that they know something's not right. And to
Yep.
leave them there overnight is, I think, you're really getting 2 to 3, maybe 4 grades lower. The longer they sit in pens until they're harvested, the worse it is on them. And
Yep.
it makes a big difference. And I've even known of animals that broke through fences. They rounded them back up, put them through there, and then were bruised, and they went ahead and harvested them when the animal was, obviously highly stressed. They should have, called and said, "Hey, we're leaving these two in the back of the pen. You need to take them back and bring them when they're calmer," but I've seen carcasses with bruise marks, from when they arrive. So you want to make sure that you have a good relationship with your processor and
Yep.
that they're, very structured. And I think Dr. Belk's study, I mean, it blew me away when I saw what she was doing. And I'm like, oh, we've got to do a podcast on this, because tenderness is one of our big things.
Yep. Absolutely.
And one of the students, Abby, is going to do a stress on hauling. That's coming out of Auburn, and we just have a lot of other things we're going to work with them this coming year.
Yeah. I think it's, there's very little education about all this stuff you're talking about, Desi, except what you're doing with a podcast and I think the American Wagyu Association. But the more we can help, so people ask me, Pete, why are you so available for your knowledge? And why is Desi, sharing her knowledge or Mr. Takeda? Well, it's not a secret. If we can help the industry be better and more consistent, and that actually has everything to do with genetics, with breeding, with husbandry, with the diet, with the harvest, marketing, truth and labeling, all of these pieces of the puzzle. If we can do better at that, if you share that, and we can get more people that are into this, doing it at a very world class level, that's great for everybody. And I think that so what I find in this industry, it's kind of like the fly fishing industry. Uh, People were just so willing to share? How do you catch that world-class tarpon or that bonefish or that sailfish? What fly did you use? How did you make that fly? What was your stripping technique? And your hooking technique. I mean, it's there's just a lot of sharing of knowledge. But if you're not a person, it's hard to get. In other words, you have
Right.
got to get out there, be aggressive, ask questions, find the right people. But I think you're one of the first to create really more of a higher level platform. Not higher level. What I'm trying to say, more of a public platform for.
Yes, a public platform. And I hope to include the consumers too, because when we do our podcast from USDA, I learn things too as I go. I mean, they showed me how to tell the difference. Like I now, because I worry sometimes that steaks, when people send in steaks, I always say I need them from the 12th rib, so everybody's on a level playing field. And I get some, I'm like, oh my God, that's like so close to the chuck. So they taught us, or they taught me how to tell what rib that particular steak came from. And I'm going to pass that on in our podcast and,
And
you know, let people learn.
Yep, Japan, I think Australia and America, we break the ribeye down at different rib sections,
Yes,
and there's advantage to the lower ribs. Uh,
most definitely.
so that's another kind of thing that's confusing in the world. And the grading scores, we talked about that. I was at a butcher shop in New England, and they touted they had the finest beef in the world. So they had Japanese Wagyu, they had Australian Wagyu, and they had American Wagyu. And they showed this grading system the grading system for each was different for each country. And I looked at that grading system and it looked like hieroglyphics. It was so complicated. And I'm thinking, and I asked the butcher, I said, well, tell me how this works. How do you compare, intermuscular, marbling from Japan to Australia to America? And he said, I really don't know. And I said, and he said, our consumers, they just like the fact that there's a grade, but they don't understand it. So, Desi, that's a whole other thing to educate um,
Yes.
and to try to normalize a lot of this stuff. Countries can have their own proprietary way of doing things, but if I'm going to compare Australia and Japan and America, I have to have kind of a basis of discussion. So we're working on that one too. I think that's going to help the consumers.
I do too, because we cut on the 12th, Japan cuts on the 6th. So,
Oh,
I mean, they're already a couple of grades ahead of us right there. So, but very simple algorithm could, make a correction on that.
yeah,
And,
that we need that.
yes, we need that.
And every country, being the chairman of the World Wagyu Council, it's been a real joy because every country is different. They have different cultures, they have different culinary appetites. The Japanese eat with chopsticks. They eat like
Right.
servings. Wagyu served by the ounce. Over here, we eat with shovels. We
That's right.
we want the steak, but you can't do that with Wagyu. But so I think it's fascinating that how all the countries are kind of working with this that are maturing into the Wagyu industry. But America is unique. We are the largest consumer of beef in the world, and what, Desi, maybe 5 to 6, 7% of what we produce over here is prime, and Wagyu
Yes.
feeds prime virtually 100% of the time at highest levels. I mean,
Yes.
we just need to uh, satisfy the consumer demand in our backyard. If
Right.
I calculated if we could get that prime market, a large portion of that prime market, that's a 10 billion, 15 billion, going on $20 billion industry in America.
It
And
is.
then the realization that it's healthy, you're going to throw us a lot more market share because we have a product that's healthy. So um, I think we've gone from a niche kind of cottage type industry now to where we're showing people uh, in the industry that, whoa, there's something here that's special. Let me just say this too about the USDA. I applaud the USDA and the work that you're doing. in the American Wagyu Association because they are open-minded about increasing their marbling scores higher to reflect, what Wagyu produces. And one of the reasons that really struck me, I said, why would they be interested in doing that? Because it's 5, 6, 7% of, or it might be less than, less than 1/10 of 1%, is Wagyu produced in the beef in America. And they said, because you're on to something, Wagyu industry. You're producing a superior product in terms of flavor, tenderness, taste, health benefits, and fat in the muscle. So if we can give you guys credit for that, we think that the rest of the cattle industry is going to aspire to improve their product. Fascinating, fascinating. So it's interesting times.
It is interesting times, and I will tell you, 8 years ago or 9 years ago, I couldn't even get the USDA to return an email or a phone call. And,
Yeah.
now it's like we're, on weekly talking, and I just love them. They're so open, and they get excited too. It's their job to grade beef. And when you get 25-year beef graders around nothing but a whole slew of top-notch Wagyu steaks from around the USA. We were all excited. It was really great. You could feel the energy as we went. Oh, this one. Oh, look at this one. Oh, look at that one. And doing the grading, and it was really enjoyable. And I know that they want to do the best for the American people too. And I also want to say, I didn't realize how much it's not just beef. I was thinking one way, but I mean, they go and inspect cotton. They inspect, USDA is in our life all about everything, and it's a good thing. And it's a good thing.
Yeah. Well, food safety is huge. I mean, if you're in the food business, whether it be the raising cattle or chickens or a restaurant, it's all about food safety. So um, a lot of these rules, regulations, some can get in the way, but for the most part, we need to improve that whole scenario of food safety. And I think, the smaller farmers have an advantage actually in that because they have a lot of control over what they do. And if something goes wrong, then you can pinpoint it on a small farm. But I don't know of anybody in the cattle industry. I don't know how big you are or small you are. Food safety is number one.
Right. But I do want people to know, since I am a carnivore and you are too, that more people in the U.S. get E. coli and salmonella from lettuce and salads than they do from beef. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
Well, let me throw this in, Bessie. I've got four. Two of them are vegetarians,
I know.
and they're out of the will. They're not involved. The rest, but they're nice people.
Well, I have a different feeling about vegetarians. I really admire them because I'm going to tell you, I am a hypocrite. I cannot I cannot get to know my steers and then have them processed. So I have to side with the vegetarians and respect them because, I mean, if I didn't love the taste of the beef so much, but I certainly can't be the one to, pull the switch. But, because I love my cattle so much, but that's just another thing. I am a hypocrite though. I will let people know that. And, someone caught me one time eating a Beyond Burger.
Oh my!
And yeah, but I was not home. I was away. And, so they even took a picture of me and said, well, I'm going to upload this and show everybody. And I said, look, if I can't have Wagyu, I'll take the Beyond Burger.
And
So I got out of it.
And I think, to me, that whole movement of artificial produced beef or whatever, you know, I think it's the American ingenuity at its best. And so, let them run with it. And
That's right.
and if
Hey,
they,
the day they can produce a Wagyu steak out of plant protein, I'm all for it. Let me see when that day comes. I doubt I'll still be alive, but technology is just going wild. So, I'm pretty open to any of it.
you
Well, Pete, I've really enjoyed having you on this program, and I know everybody's going to really love listening to your story. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we
I
end the session?
yeah, thank you, Desi. It's been a lot of fun. It's been great knowing you through the years, and you are a leader in the industry, and just keep banging away at it.
I am. I'm going to. The last thing I want to do is really prove that the health benefits of the beef, because I think people are more conscious of healthy food going in their bodies. And you talk about price, but Pete, when you go to these stores that sell organic, and it's really not that much more if they look, they buy by the ounce or less, and they pay a very high price for organic and enhance, vitamin added or electrolyte or this or that. I mean, if they would compare those prices to Wagyu beef, it's really not that high.
I just bought, for Thanksgiving, a 30-pound turkey for the family from an organic farm here, $18 a pound,
Yep.
and I'm selling Wagyu ground full at my store for $14 a pound.
Yep.
There you go.
And I mean, I know people that have percentage Wagyu are selling the hamburger for even less than that. And I mean, it's a great product. It still has the health benefits. And, I just think people should, instead of saying, oh, it's so expensive, well, how much did you pay for that? Electrolyte water, that you bought, or the organic fruit, or how about the dried fruit and nut organic? If you look at it per pound, you go buy you a steak tonight.
I don't think you can't eat a lot of it, Desi. I mean, I'm a big eater, and 5 ounces for sometimes almost too much of full blood. You
That's
know,
right, and people don't realize that when you get a luxurious steak, a full blood luxurious steak that is a sensory experience. When you first taste it, it's by the slice. You're not going to eat a big chunk of it at one time, because you're going to let that piece of meat sit on your tongue, and you're just going to just enjoy the sensory experience of having that texture and that taste in your mouth. And I mean, you'll be surprised at how full you get because of the rich butteriness of that steak. And it doesn't take a huge ribeye. There's no way you could eat I'd say, 35% IMF, intermuscular fat and up. You're not going to be able to eat a lot of that steak.
well, Desi, we have a little. I tell people, and kind of trick at home is that we'll take a pound of full blood Wagyu. Let's easy numbers. Let's say it's $15 for that pound.
Mm-hmm.
We'll make 3 5-ounce patties, pan fry them, and that's $5 a steak essentially, and that's what we're having at home. And that
Right.
fried full blood Wagyu is one of the best steaks you'll ever have. So you don't have to, there's a lot of opportunity, and it's you don't have to focus on the ribeye or the strip loin or the tenderloin. So, well, thank you, Desi. Great, and I know how to motivate you. Just say, Desi, it can't be done.
Yeah, I've kind of waded through that, and I've had a lot of rejection in my life, and I just keep going. But it's all good, and it's all for the good of everybody. I think it's all good. So we are going into 2024 all great on the Wagyu side, and we're here to help and share our knowledge and experiences. And we are going to have some podcasts that are going to be a little controversial too, because I've had people contact me that want to put their opinions out, and I mean, people want things to happen fast, but it doesn't happen fast all the time. You just have to educate yourself, and buy the best and stay healthy, the best food you can put in your body, and stay healthy.
Great. Amen. Amen.
Amen. Well, thank you, Pete, and I hope we see each other soon.
Look forward to it, Desi. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay. Bye bye.
Bye.